Today I'm speaking to Danielle, who is the director-curator of the Fundy Geological Museum here in Parsboro, Nova Scotia. And looking at all these dinosaurs, I got to say that finally we get to a museum that speaks to my generation. Right? Not to say I'm old, but I am. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about how the museum began, what the purpose of it is, and on a personal note, how did you become involved in this?
Absolutely. So the Fundy Geological Museum, or Fundy Geo Museum for short, basically came into existence in the early 90s. In fact, it was 1993 when the museum first opened its doors, which you may be familiar with. The movie Jurassic Park came out that same year.
I was just going to ask you, where are the velociraptors? They're in the basement, right?
Absolutely. Right? No, we keep them away from the guests.
You'll show me afterwards, right?
Sure thing. Right. Yeah, so the museum, it came into being in the early 90s, and that was after a major push by the local community and Nova Scotians at large, because there was some really significant fossils found in the early 80s along the Parsboro shoreline. So if you walk outside the museum, we are on the Bay of Fundy. We are part of the Minas Basin of the Bay of Fundy. And that's fantastic because we experience the world's highest tidal range, and that is great for us as paleontologists because that means we can rely on those tides to erode the cliffs that are on the shoreline here. Because of where we live and the ages of the rocks, we actually find dinosaur fossils and other fossils of reptiles and proto-mammals too in those cliffs. So in 1984, a local rock hound named of Eldon George was kind of out doing his thing, walking along the beach, keeping an eye out for things, and he came across these really significant small theropod footprints. So theropod dinosaurs are commonly associated with T-Rex, Velociraptor, Deinonychus. The ones that we have here predate those dinosaurs by, I'd say roughly 140 million years.
Wow.
So these are some of the earliest dinosaurs that you find in Canada and some of the earliest in the world, in fact. But he was walking around on the beach and found these tiny, tiny footprints of these theropod dinosaurs that kind of set off a media storm about the area and really brought the world to focus in on Nova Scotian paleontology. Eventually that led to big community efforts and fundraising efforts until you have what you see here, which is the Fundy Geo Museum, which is part of the Nova Scotia Museum.
So these are found in cliffs. Now, my understanding is I have seen them, like, for example, the Badlands out in Alberta where they find these dinosaurs. I guess it would be in rock, right?
Yes.
So they're digging, but you guys don't do that.
Not so much, no. So we're really, really fortunate in terms of how we do our field work. So most paleontologists, you kind of see that iconic, they're in the dusty dirt. It's kind of this like shade of rock, maybe some more beige. There's no vegetation. You can just feel how hot and dry it is, and we don't have that. So we work right on the ocean floor bed. We're right on the shoreline there, and we're pulling these fossils out of the cliffs as the tides are eroding them out. It's probably the most beautiful fossil location in the world. I know I'm biased, but it definitely is one of the most beautiful places to do fieldwork, and it's kind of one of the easiest because we don't do a lot of the digging. We rely on the wind and the water to do it for us. Now, the caveat there is because of those tidal ranges, there are 2 points every day that we can't do field work because the tide is so high that we can't get to it, unless you're rappelling down a cliff, which we try not to do.
So these are called specimens, right?
They are, yes.
I've been called a fine specimen more than once in my life. Well, who brings them in? Is there a team here that goes, or the local people, when they find them, do they bring them in?
So it's a group effort, actually. So what we do is we have paleontologists that are associated with the museum who are experts in excavating specimens from the field. And what I mean by that is when we find fossils, they're not always in great condition. So oftentimes we have to go in with consolidants, which are kind of glue-like substances. And we coat the bones with them so that when we pull them out of the cliff and we transport them to the museum's lab, they don't crumble, they don't fall apart on us. We often make discoveries with help of citizen scientists, though. So we work really closely with our local community and even visitors that come from afar to help us find these significant specimens, these significant fossils.
So if you find them by law, you can't keep them.
Correct.
So you
yes.
have to turn them in, which is a very good thing. It is.
It is. So as a paleontologist, of course, again, I'm biased, but I want to make sure that people understand that fossils are incredibly rare. In fact, all the fossils that you see in all the museums all over the world constitute less than 1% of all life that's ever been on the planet. The act of fossilization itself, the scientific process, is an extremely rare occurrence. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that we preserve the ones that we find as best we can.
So how did you get involved doing this? So what's your background? I know I worked for Parks Canada. That was just bad luck for me. But it must have been something else for you.
It was. So as a child, I grew up rodeoing, which
Rodeo?
I grew up in Texas. Yeah. So I grew up outside, you know, working with cattle and horses and all kinds of livestock. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me because it made me comfortable being out in the middle of nowhere, right? I would be on wide open fields with just an animal, maybe a friend or two. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that nature is not just what you go out to on the weekends to get away from it all. It's not just beautiful waterfalls or mountainous areas. It can be anywhere, right? And from that experience, I kind of took my love of the scientific process, you know, having things be logical, having them make sense, and having a method of how you do things. Eventually, I just kind of learned to combine it all into a love of dinosaurs and paleontology. So I did my graduate studies in Fairbanks, Alaska. So I worked with a professor there. I actually specialized in Mesozoic marine reptiles.
You lost me.
I know. So during the age of dinosaurs, it's quite a long period of time. We're talking hundreds of millions of years. At the end of the age of dinosaurs is when you have critters like T-Rex and Triceratops. You also had some of the scariest predators in the oceans at that time alive during the same time that T-Rex was walking on land. I specialized in those marine critters, so the plesiosaurs and mosasaurs that were swimming around in the oceans.
Is that the one you see in Jurassic Park that comes out of the water and takes that, I don't know what it was,
Yeah,
ugly,
the shark.
ugly one anyway.
Yeah.
It just took him. My thing was huge.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a bit of a caveat with that. Movie magic, they tend to make dinosaurs and marine reptiles quite a bit bigger than they were in real life.
That was a big beast.
It was, and it was in real life too. So the mosasaur in that movie is about 10 feet longer than the largest fossil specimen that we've ever found. But when you're talking about fossils, again, there's a wide variety of sizes there just because we don't have fossils from every specimen that lived, right? So they could have been that big, right? We just don't know for sure.
I'm here with Danielle, and we're looking at the world's smallest dinosaur footprints. And as I was saying to you earlier, it sort of looks like a little bird you'd see in the snow in the winter.
It does. No, that's a great observation because what you're looking at here are some of the earliest footprints of theropod dinosaurs. These are the distant ancestors to modern birds, so it makes sense that their footprints would look very similar. So what you're seeing here is one of at least 3 specimens found globally where we have footprints of this exact size range. And there's quite a lot of them that you'll notice there. So most likely what this fossil is capturing is those earliest footprints of these baby dinosaurs hatching and running around the nest.
This was found here.
Yes, so this was found by a local rock hounder who spent a lot of his time on the beaches looking for rocks, minerals, and fossils. This is kind of the claim to fame for the Parsborough shore. This is the fossil that really got a lot of people's attention to this area from that geological perspective. So I mean, it's on display for a reason. It's a big part of the museum's history.
And I see you got a penny there.
Those are also extinct.
And that's extinct too. I was going to say that's a fossil as well, right?
It is. So we often use everyday items. So coins, pencils, magnifying glasses, hammers, if it's a large enough specimen. We often take pictures with those everyday items to give people a sense of scale.
So how big would these animals get?
That's a great question. So these are coelophysid dinosaurs. So that's a specific type of theropod dinosaur. And they're quite small compared to what people normally think of as dinosaurs. The adults of this sort of group of animals would have been like dog height, large dog height, but quite long. So they would have had a longer neck and a very long tail to kind of counterbalance that weight of their head, so that when they're running, you know how road runners, they sort of get really low to the ground and they kind of have a flat back? Imagine that, but with a dinosaur that's, I would say knee height, just big enough to be scary if there's a bunch of them.
So did they have Wile E. Coyote chasing them too?
No mammals of that size at this time, although there were proto-mammals, which are small rodent-like animals that kind of straddled that definition between a reptile and a mammal. So there were, they were absolutely a food source for these carnivorous dinosaurs.
So these were carnivorous. They weren't omnivores. They were strictly meat eaters.
They were meat eaters only. Yeah, absolutely.
So what would they be hunting?
So we actually do have some fossil specimens that preserve stomach contents, and in fact, I want to show you one that we have in the museum here. So this is an exact replica of Coelophysis, which is one of those early dinosaurs, and it's, again, a theropod dinosaur, so an ancestor to modern birds. The specimen that you see here is really rare in that this is the entire specimen. This is the entire individual body of this animal. There's no bones that have been placed to make it look complete or pretty or anything like that. This is an exact replica of what this animal looked like when it was died, fossilized, and then found. And in terms of what it ate, well, Coelophysis was a carnivore. And in fact, if you look really closely into the stomach cavity there, you can see that there is evidence of its last meal, which was Hesperosuchus, which is a small crocodile type reptile that was running around at the same time that Coelophysis was.
Now, would his meal be a predator as well?
Hesperosuchus is, yes. So it would have had carnivorous teeth, so it most likely would have eaten meat as well. Crocodiles in general are often scavenger type predators or opportunistic feeders. So yes, it would have eaten meat, but it may not have been an apex predator like Coelophysis was.
So this was the boss, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, how big did they get?
Well, this is an adult-sized Coelophysis here. So you can see they're not terribly tall, but quite long. And we've actually positioned this dinosaur, this Coelophysis, in a running position. So you can kind of get an idea of how so their body mass was kind of leaning forward, and they would have been actively searching out their prey and running it down. And it's great because then you can really see that beautiful long tail that's a counterweight to the rest of the body.
How fast would they go?
So we don't really have a good idea for how fast they go. Coelophysis is one of the best preserved fossil dinosaur groups in the world. But because it's small, it doesn't get the same attention that some of the other dinosaur groups do, like T-Rex. So computer modeling has given us a lot more information in the past few years. We have a rough estimate that a T-Rex could probably clock in at around 26 miles per hour. Coelophysis is quite a bit smaller, so probably less than that, but we're just not entirely sure yet.
Now, would they be solitary hunters or would they hunt in packs?
So the fossil evidence indicates that they lived in family groups. Now, we don't have a good fossil preservation of them actively taking down a prey. Oftentimes, the stomach contents we find are partially digested. So we're not entirely sure if they were pack hunters or they lived in family groups and went out hunting on their own. But if they lived in family groups, there's a really good chance that they did hunt together.
I'm here with Regan, and we're in the lab, and we're going to make a plaster mold of a fossil.
Yeah, so this is something that we do with school groups, and sometimes we have special events where people can do this with us. And it's also something that we do, we make casts and molds for other museums so that we can share our collection without actually sending them the physical fossil. So today, you're going to make two replicas. One of them is of a trilobite.
Trilobite.
Yep, and the other is of a theropod dinosaur tooth.
A tooth.
Yes. So when you were in the museum, you saw the Coelophysis skeleton. Looks kind of like a velociraptor. This would have come from a similar creature. So it's pretty easy. We have some water. This is plaster.
Okay.
What I'm going to get you to do is just sprinkle the plaster and try and make an even layer and let it settle.
All right.
And you're just going to keep on doing that.
All of this?
Not all of it. So you're going to go little by little. So we're looking for, eventually, we're going to get to a point where there's going to be kind of a little island of plaster that forms, and then we're going to stir it. And what we're doing is you're letting it settle, and that's going to hopefully eliminate air bubbles.
Air bubbles.
Yeah. So just keep going,
Okay.
and just keep on.
Feel like an episode of Breaking Bad here.
And then there's just a little bit more, and then we're ready for pouring. Or ready for stirring.
Stirring. All right.
Yeah. So you can get started and just kind of stir, and you just kind of want to keep on stirring. So don't go too fast, but remember, we're just trying to break up all the lumps. And then once you're pretty sure that you got all the lumps gone.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yep. Now this it's okay if it spills out over a little bit. You can just put that down.
All right.
And now just pour and just fill up this mold. It's good? Yeah. And then this one as well?
I get to keep these, right?
You do. Yep. A little bit more.
A little bit more.
All right, this is the part I didn't really prepare you for. You can just put that down. So we've been trying to eliminate air bubbles, but you can see some kind of popping up to the surface. And we really want to make sure that there's no air bubbles on the bottom, because when we unmold it, those would actually be visible on the surface, little indents. So what we got to do is we got to shake the table.
Oh, I like that.
So we're just going to do a little drum roll. Gets a little messy. That's probably good. And now we've just brought some of the more air bubbles up to the top.
Okay.
So I'm just going to kind of like break some of those. But that's going to be fine. And then, this could probably be ready to unmold in a couple hours. Because they're so small, it's better to, wait about 24 hours. But with some TV magic, I have one ready for you.
Ooh.
So this is actually the same mold that you just made. It's just with a different material.
Different material, all right.
So you're actually going to be unmolding a theropod dinosaur tooth. So this is something that you got to take home.
Oh, yes.
And then this is what it looks like after it's been painted.
Painted, all right.
Yeah. So then you can take that. So just kind of, this one, and then just kind of reach in. Yeah. See a little tooth. Yep. And then this one here, you're going to have, a replica, like a perfect replica of a trilobite.
Trilobite. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Go right on my desk.
yeah, we've done this with something small. This is a mold that I made for a Triassic footprint. So this is like a bit bigger. This is something that definitely you want to, after you mix it and put it into the mold, you let it sit for a couple days.
Couple of days, all right.
And then you just paint them. Like I have my two trusty colors, raw sienna and burnt umber, and I mix them, and then it kind of mimics the red sandstone that we have here in Nova Scotia.
So this is like the one we saw in the exhibit outside, right?
Yes, this is an exact replica.
Exact replica.
Yeah,
right.
of one of the trackways that we have in the museum. So when you see this red sandstone, this part of Nova Scotia, it's usually around 200 million years old, and it's from the Triassic-Jurassic boundary. So that's really what our museum is known for. There's other types of sites in Nova Scotia to find fossils. Some of them are around 300 million years old. A really good place to see 300 million year old fossils is Joggins Fossil Cliffs. That's kind of one of our sister sites. They have a museum there, and it's the best place in the world to see Carboniferous fossils. So 300 million year old, it's the coal age, and it really preserves an ancient rainforest in Nova Scotia. If you want to see some of our fossils, out on the beach, we have lots of opportunities to do that. You can join us on a beach tour, which we do regularly in July and August. We take people out to Wasson Bluff, which is our dinosaur site, to see us actually excavate fossils. And on the beach, you can go out to that site on horseback in one of our special Fossils on Horseback tour. Ride along the Bay of Fundy to a fossil site. It's the only place in the world. Well, I shouldn't say only, but probably one of the only places. Yeah,
one of the few ones
that
in
you
the
can
world
do
that
that.
you can go on horseback, right? Yeah. Is that a tooth?
This is something that we are going to be making a cast of. Unfortunately, not today, but this is a megalodon shark tooth.
The one that they made the movie about? That
Yeah.
big shark that ate other sharks?
Yes, it could have been the size of a school bus. But we
Wow.
actually, fishermen find those shark teeth.
It's heavy.
Yeah, they find them on the ocean floor. It's something that's brought up when they trawl. A lot of them, St. George's Bank, the Sable Island Bank as well.
So, how many teeth would this shark have?
As a good, probably hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah, just like the sharks
Modern
today.
day shark, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Should have got a mold of that.
We'll be making one.
All right. Now, what other activities can you do here?
So in addition, we do the
Aside from
fossil,
this, yeah.
the fossil casting. When we have, especially school groups and kids, but then also we do this with adults as well. We will do mineral identification, go out to the beach and find local minerals, and then learn how to identify them. We do a lot of nature activities as well, connected with the ecosystem of the Bay of Fundy. So it's kind of depending on the time of year, we do a lot of different things in the museum.
Things like that are hands-on that kids would get into, right?
Yeah, kids and adults.
And I'm sort of like a kid at heart. I know I'm going to keep this. What other specimens do you have here that would be of interest?
You know what? We have a lot. So what you saw in the gallery and what's in here is really only a fraction of what we have in the museum. Just like most museums, 90% of the collection is actually behind the scenes.
Okay. So when do we get to see the velociraptors? In the basement, right?